This section is, of course, cash flow part 2. And make sure you watch that first cash flow section before you see this, if you haven't already. In the first cash flow section, where we talk about gross versus net, and how to calculate gross when you know what the net needs to be after taxes. This section we're going to take a step further. Most clients think in terms of their take-home pay. They know what they need to net. It's your job to tell them what they need to gross. And ultimately, it's your job to tell them how big that income bucket needs to be in order to generate what they need to gross, in order to generate what they need to net. When you can do this kind of math in front of a client, it again sets you apart as an expert, because they see how quickly and easily you do it versus how complicated it is to them. You bring clarity to their situation, and that's ultimately what sells. Now, there are sales presentations that will weave all of these different concepts that you're learning about into a sales presentation, but I need you to get a crisp and polished understanding of how these presentations work. Let's say, for example, that you're meeting with an individual who has Social Security income of $1,200 a month, and let's just say also, for example, they have a pension of $1,000 per month. Just keep it really simple. Well, we know that that represents $2,200 of guaranteed income sources for them. Now, first thing we need to do is assume that those are gross numbers in this case. This is pre-tax. Let's assume 20% for federal taxes. Well, to take the taxes off, minus 20%, all you're going to do is take this number multiplied by the reciprocal, so times 0.8, because they're ultimately going to get 80% of that number if they lose 20% to taxes. So 2,200 times 0.8 is $1,760 net from their Social Security and their pension. But let's assume that their need, that their cash flow need is $3,000 net. So they've only got a little bit more than half of their actual need covered from their fixed income sources. So now we need to figure out what the gap is. Well, if they have 1,760 minus 3,000, there's a shortfall of $1,240 net. Again, the net income is ultimately what you need to solve for the client. Laying it out like this makes it really easy to follow for the client. Here's what you've got coming in. This is what that adds up to. You need to back off the taxes to figure out what you're going to net from these sources. You need to determine what your need is, and then you figure out where your shortfall is. Now, not everyone's going to have a shortfall. If you've got a husband and a wife and they both have Social Security and sometimes they both even have a pension, assuming they have no debt, a lot of times the income from these sources will be enough for them to retire off of. That means they need little to no money from their nest egg in the near future. But in this scenario, we've got a shortfall here. You're going to learn about growth and income buckets in detail in future presentations, but for now I just want you to see how you need to build from the bottom up to get to a nest egg number. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. So we know that 1,240 is the monthly shortfall. First thing you need to do is multiply that by 12 to get to the annual shortfall. So if you take that times 12, that equals $14,800 per year net shortfall. So I'm going to write that number over here, and you're going to see how I'm going to build this. So we know that's the net number. Most of their money is going to be pre-tax money. So in order to net this, it's going to be taxed before it becomes net money. Let's work with the same 20%. You're basically building this in reverse, and I'll show you what I mean. In order to net $14,880, after 20% taxes, they need to gross $18,600. This is the same calculation we did in part 1 of cash flow. All you do is you take this divided by 0.8 to get to the gross. Now your clients are going to need a lump sum of money to draw from in order to gross this. So let's say that you want your clients to take out a 5% income stream from a pool of money to gross this. So the question becomes, how big does that pool of money need to be to take a 5% income stream from that pool of money to gross $18,600 per year? All you need to do is take what needs to be grossed and divide it by the decimal of the withdrawal stream. 5% as a decimal is 0.05. So all you do is you take 18,600 divided by 0.05, and that equals $372,000. So in other words, your client needs an income bucket of $372,000. 5% of that is $18,600 minus 20% taxes, nets $14,880. So what you just did for the client in a pretty quick period of time, now I'm doing this slow because I'm explaining how it's done. In a pretty quick period of time, you figured out what their income sources will net them, what the shortfall is between their net and their need. You took that shortfall times 12, you grossed it to pre-tax money, and you determined how big of a pool of pre-tax money is needed in order to make up that shortfall. That process, when done on the fly on a calculator, on the board, takes a couple of minutes, not even. You could knock that out in probably a minute and a half. And the clients who come into you with no clarity on anything, in a matter of a minute and a half, you've told them precisely how big their income bucket needs to be to make up the income gap after taxes so they can retire. Now, ultimately, that's what your clients are paying for when it comes to financial planning. They're paying different amount of money for the investment management. Again, that's a whole nother section of SAM School that we'll get into. But most people can't get from here to here on their own. They don't know how the math works. That's ultimately what they're buying, is clarity on those numbers. You need to think of this as the income bucket. Hopefully their nest egg is at least that big, if not bigger. But let's say that their total nest egg was $500,000. Ultimately, that portion would go into the income bucket, and then the rest of the money would go into the growth bucket. They take their income from the income bucket, the growth bucket is set aside to let grow. Now there's much more to the growth and income bucket presentation That's a presentation that you're going to see here shortly. But just fundamentally, I want you to get a good grasp of the math that takes this full circle. This math will make you a lot of money as a financial advisor. Because as simple as it is to you, as you get good at it, it's new to the clients you're going to be interacting with. That's where the true value creation comes into play. They're paying you for this knowledge, and then ultimately they're also going to pay you for the asset management. And that's a whole nother discussion in a whole nother presentation. Watch this video a few times, practice it, get really good at this. It's a great way to gain the client's confidence right out of the gate when they see how crisp you can put all this together for them.